usually the toxic person doesn't realize he or she is the toxic person, right? In the
Right?
first place, they're usually not self-aware of that. So how do you help this person become a healthy person?
But compare both. Compare the toxic person, this amazing person that is proactive, happy, fun, has passion for the business and what they do in terms of career. So explain the both sides of that.
That's a really great question. And I think if we look at these people of, right, who is the, happy, proactive, chances are they have had difficult situations, just as much as someone who is, let's say, toxic, right? They come in with these, negative beliefs, these negative behaviors and negative results. So for me, I really work on the, I kind of work on the, what, right? You said our experiences lead to our thoughts, which lead to our beliefs, which lead to our actions, which lead to our results. So I really play a lot in the action and results space. And I do have business partners who, work in other spaces because it is important. Like I don't do as much work with the, trauma and past experiences, right? I go see people for my own past experiences when because there are times I'm like, no matter how much work we do, we're never done. This is life, We always have opportunities to improve our thoughts, our beliefs that impact our actions. And so, it's
before you go
important.
forward, I'm sorry
No,
cutting you
please,
off
jump
because
in.
it just something came to my mind. What helped me a lot, the reason why I'm bringing this is because I know there's a lot of people struggling with the same problems, right? What works for me was adding new thoughts to my mind, reading, studying new thoughts, trying to learning new things. So that was very helpful.
It's really helpful. And you know what? Our thoughts are everything, right? I often say thoughts are things. So there is a lot of work that I do, especially when I'm doing smaller teams and we're working over longer periods of time. We will run into, kind of a spot where someone can't get through this, like a frustration, for example, or, they continue to have the same struggle over and over. And a lot of times we will backtrack it to a belief and a thought. And you're absolutely right. Like you can have new beliefs just by thinking a different thought over and over. And so there are some times that I do that work. There are other times that I refer and recommend that people maybe do some more intensive work, like somebody maybe who is toxic, right? So it's like, woo, you got some stuff going on that is beyond, what I do. So let me send you to the best person for that. And, sometimes I can share from my own toolkit and my own experience. It's like sometimes, is there another story that is equally true but more empowering? So, for me, I had an experience with family last Christmas, and we all got together, and it was so fun, but it was like extended family, and it was all these different personalities, and right, we're staying in this one big house, and it's so fun, and it's also, right, we're bumping into each other, and it's so funny, and my sister-in-law asked me, she's like, wait, how do you, like, what's going on? Like, doesn't that bother you? And I'm like, well, I could let it bother me, but it doesn't serve me. So the story I'm going to tell myself is they just don't realize, right, that was rude. So now I have two choices. Now that I've told myself a different thought, a different story, I have a different belief about this person, right? So now from that place, I am empowered to, does it bother me enough to go have the conversation? Or would I rather just let it go?
Exactly.
But it's my choice, and I'm empowered instead of coming at like I'm a victim of somebody else's behavior and choices.
Amazing.
So to Lichia's point about the awareness and how we help people, that I think is a really important question. And when we talk about helping, right, there's a difference between helpful helping, where we're really supporting someone, and unhelpful helping, where we're trying to rescue them or do it for them, where we're taking too much ownership. So that's a really important piece, I think, of really identifying with them and having those conversations of like, whoa, like this is rough in here. What did you think about how it went today? How do you think everybody else was impacted? Like, did you see that? what are we going to do about it? Because I'm telling you that for me, my culture in my salon is a non-negotiable. So this is either something we're going to fix together, or we're going to decide that we're not a fit to work together. And it doesn't have to come from a place of being angry and frustrated,
Yes.
just honest and kind. Like if we can get past the idea of ultimatums, which are like, that's never gonna, that can never happen again, right? That's a very different thing than like, hey, this is a non-negotiable for me. Like I want to be in relationship with you, and so this is me being kind by doing the work to try to stay in relationship with you, just like you described in your marriage of like learning over time and getting better. And then we really have to learn to let go and observe, right? Of like, this is that now. That person has a choice, and we have zero control over what they're going to do. They're either going to choose to come in and have healthy conversations and work on it, or they're not. And maybe they're just not ready. You know what? Maybe this is part of their journey, right? Like we don't know, but let's honor everybody's choices. So when sometimes we have really good intentions and we want to help and we're like, oh, but they're continuing to struggle. They're continuing to not show up and work in healthy ways. That's actually not helpful, right? What's helpful is holding them accountable in this really compassionate way, because if you don't, the opportunity for us to get frustrated, the opportunity for the rest of our team, like the rest of our team, everybody else renting chairs, they're paying the same amount to rent their chair. Why should they have to put up with this, right?
Yes.
That's not fair to them.
True.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you make the point for them to be accountable? And when do you know that it's time to let the person go? Because, of course, I believe everyone deserves the chance, because sometimes they could not be aware, and a sincere, compassionate conversation could help that person to change. A lot of things that I changed in my behavior, it was because someone had the conversation with me. Most of the time, Tico. Like, Ligia, this is not good. The way you're behaving, the way you're talking to people, it's not working.
From a place of love, right?
Yes.
I love you and I want you to be happy and successful. Yeah, that's why I'm going to be honest with you. That's amazing. I love it.
But then when you have an employee, he's not your best friend to the point you have this openness that you can say things, difficult things. How do you do that? And when you know that it's time to give up, like, okay, this person doesn't want to change, doesn't want to be aware, doesn't want to improve the behavior.
Right?
How do you know?
Okay, this is such
That's
a great
difficult.
question. Yes, it is,
To
right?
know when.
It is. So I have two different answers to that question. The first one is really, like you're saying, of us as a leader, you know, and kind of like Tico was saying before, of like investing in our leadership skills to make sure we are having those conversations. Dr. Nate Regier has a great blog post called "Fixers Don't Lead, Leaders Don't Fix." So, and it has some of those basic steps for how to break down that conversation. So if you're not a reader and you don't want to go through, you know, the Conflict Without Casualties book, you know, you can just go right to that blog post and get the 3 steps. You could also reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would be happy to walk you through it. That's the place where I hang out. So Larita is Larita Jarvis, Jarvis. That's the best place for me. It's just the easiest way for me to manage it. And oftentimes there are, you know, I will just ask people like, how are you going to approach this? And it's usually just a simple tweak. It's like one of those 3 steps that they're missing. And then it's, oh, right. It might be the curious questions of like, oh, I'm not asking them how they're planning on dealing with it. Right. Or it might be, oh, I'm not being clear about the fact that if we don't get this resolved, then I am not going to continue in this relationship. It could be, and it may be that we're, you know, not being honest about, you know, how much we dislike this and how uncomfortable it is for us. So, so I recommend, that's one answer of like, you're right. Are we really clear? Because when somebody, you know, when I have a client and they're like, okay, I'm ready to do a termination, my first question is always, are they going to be surprised? And if they are going to be surprised, then you have work to do. Because that should never be a surprise, right? We should have had enough conversations and the follow-up conversations of like, hey, so we had this conversation last week or last month. Where are we at with this? Because I'm not seeing the change. And again, this, you know, this is going to lead us to separate our professional relationships, you know, if it doesn't get resolved within the next blank, right? So, and then it's like, how do you want me to support you? How do you want to follow up with that? So, one, it shouldn't be a surprise for anyone else on the team either, right? Because that's a really unhealthy thing. When terminations and firings come as a surprise, it's bad for everyone. It creates this environment of fear and am I next? Am I? Sometimes, yeah, it is an employee that's so toxic that everybody's like, phew, it's about time.
They'll be happy, yeah.
But sometimes it's like, whoa, what happened?
Surprise.
Because, right, a lot of times, especially I'm guessing in the barbershop and the salon industry, these are one-on-one conversations that you're having with individuals that rent their chairs. So other people may not be aware. But if this person is aware, right, a lot of times, they're the ones kind of acting in a way of, and a lot of times they may make the choice themselves. I've seen it go that way a lot of times. If we're having this conversation and we're saying, what are you going to do about it? What do you think we should do here? Many times they'll be like, you know what, this isn't working. I think I need to go do something different, which is always a great opportunity. But to the second answer to this question of like, how do we know when it's time to terminate versus when it is, when there's an opportunity to continue to invest in somebody, that really, I do think, I really do think that when we're having the conversation over and over, and it is sometimes more of a team decision. So luckily you two, as a couple, you get to have somebody else to check you on your stuff, right? Of like, is this just me and I'm not being aware of my own stuff and I'm blaming them? Because like you said, a lot of times when somebody is really toxic, what's happening is they're not aware of their own behavior. They're blaming everybody else.
Yes.
So are you stuck in that same cycle in a little way? Are you blaming somebody else when there's an opportunity for you to do something different, for you to shift your approach that could make this work?